Okay, so let's just finish up this document by defining the last two terms that I have not defined for you yet. What is a consensus candidate? What is a spoiler? So how does a voting theorist define candidate that is broadly appealing or consensus candidate? These are vague terms. So usually when you hear people say that, you translate it, if you're a voting theorist, you translate that to what is known as a Condorcet candidate, which is not a vague term. This is fully defined in the literature. If you took CTI 105 or you attended that voting lecture, this should sound familiar to you. Okay, so generally speaking, a consensus candidate, when somebody says that in the New York Times or whatever, a voting theorist thinks they are referring to a Condorcet candidate. That's a way to make that term rigorous. So let me define that for you. In an election, a candidate is said to be Condorcet if that candidate wins all of her head-to-head matchups against every other candidate. So in this running example we have from a previous page of this document, suppose A and B went up against each other head-to-head. Okay, so let me go look at that and think about that. Here's the election, right? Think about A versus B, where C is gone. Okay, so imagine going to this electorate and asking, forget about C for a second, who do you like better, A or B? Well, these 21% of people like A better than B. These 16% of people like A better than B. These 12% of people like B better than A. These 21% of people like B better than A. These 7% of people, those people like A over B. They, of course, like C better than anybody else, but if you're just thinking about a head-to-head matchup between A and B, this 7% of people likes A over B, and finally, this 23% of people prefer B to A. So if you just go to this electorate and ask, who do you like better, A or B? 21% plus 16% plus then these 7%. Those are the people who like A over B, and there's 44% of them. On the other hand, 12% plus 21% plus 23%, those people prefer B over A. So in a head-to-head matchup between B and A, B would win. More people like B than like A when compared directly. Okay, so on the other hand, right, suppose B went against C head-to-head. So we know B wins against A head-to-head. What if B went against C head-to-head? If you do the same thing I just did, you will learn that 54% of the electorate prefers B over C, while only 46% prefers C over B. So, if you compare B to A or you compare B to C, B wins. No matter who you compare B to, a majority of the electorate prefers B to that single other candidate. Okay, so B wins all possible head-to-head matchups. That's what it means for B to be a Condorcet candidate. So, in the voting literature, Condorcet candidates are considered good. Why is that? Okay, well, in the election we were just analyzing, there are three possible candidates who could win. A could win, B could win, C could win. Does it make any sense for A to win? I mean, not really, because if you declare A the winner, and then suppose you went to the electorate and said, hey, A is the winner, you guys happy about that? A majority of people are not happy about that, because head-to-head, B beat A. Okay, so even though A was the winner, a majority of the electorate would prefer B to be the winner, just straight up head-to-head. Okay, what if you declared C the winner? Would that make sense? Again, not really, because a majority of the electorate prefers B to C. So by declaring C the winner, you have angered a majority of the electorate. The only way to make sure that you have not angered a majority of the electorate is to declare B the winner. And that, by the way, is what instant runoff voting did. Remember, B was the instant runoff voting winner. And that seems like a good outcome here, right? Because a majority of the electorate is satisfied with B. Before moving on, it's worth noting not all elections have Condorcet candidates. So there might not be a candidate that wins all of her head-to-head matchups. So if you're interested in how often a certain method chooses such a candidate, you would only consider elections in which such a candidate was even there. You don't want to consider elections that's missing such a candidate. That election data is useless. Finally, how does a voting theorist define a spoiler? Again, if you are monitoring this debate at all, the term spoiler is thrown around all the time. And it's not clear to me that the people who use the term actually know what they mean. But anyway, here's a mathematical definition that's rigorous. Given a voting method X and a particular election, a candidate is said to be spoiler if you have to satisfy two conditions. The first condition is that the candidate lost. Okay, so a spoiler candidate must be a losing candidate. It doesn't make any sense under this definition for the winning candidate to be a spoiler. So that's item one. Condition two is that if that candidate were gone, so if that candidate leaves, then you get a winner change. Okay, so let me just say two things together now. A candidate is spoiler if they lost, and furthermore, if you removed them from the election, that would cause the winner to change. So let me just go back to this example here. Let's think about plurality. Under plurality, recall A1. They got the most first place votes. So there are two losing candidates. Candidate B is a loser. Candidate C is a loser. Both of them are potentially spoilers. If you want to verify that they're spoilers, you then have to check that if you took them out of the election, it would cause the winner to change. So let's focus on candidate C. If you took candidate C out of this election, what would happen? If C were gone, right? So imagine just crossing C out right here. These 7% of people, in the absence of C, they would have voted for A. These 23% of people, in the absence of C, they would have voted for B. Okay, so if C weren't there, who would win? Well, again, we can just add the things up, right? 12%, 21% go for B. These additional 23% of people will go for B. Candidate B will get 56% of the vote if C weren't there. So candidate B would win if C weren't there. So C is a spoiler candidate. C lost, and if you took them out of the election, if you removed them, then the winner would change. The winner switched from A to B. That's what it means to be a spoiler. Okay, note a couple of things. First of all, note that being a spoiler, you have to have a method in mind, a voting method, and a particular election in mind. Okay, so the example I just walked you through, candidate C was a plurality spoiler. Candidate C may or may not be an instant runoff voting spoiler. Let's check. Under instant runoff voting, who won? Candidate B won. Remember, candidate B was the instant runoff voting winner. So C was a loser, so C could potentially be a spoiler. To actually be a spoiler, though, the removal of C would have to cause the winner to change. But notice, if you remove C, then once again, B gets 56% of the vote. So the winner doesn't change under instant runoff voting. B won before you took C out. B wins after you take C out. So C is a spoiler under plurality, but not under instant runoff voting. So that's the first note. When you're talking about spoilers, you have to have a specific method in mind. This is in contrast to a Condorcet candidate. You can be Condorcet no matter what method you're thinking about. To be Condorcet just means that going straight up head-to-head against people, I win all of those matchups. Being a spoiler is different. Okay, the last thing to note is that in the voting literature, spoiler candidates are bad. This is not considered a good thing to have happen in an election. Given a voting method, we would like to have no spoilers under that method. Why is that? Why is this a bad phenomenon? Let me just quickly again revisit this example. Let's think about plurality. A won, right? B didn't win. B came in second. It was a 37%, 33%, 30% split, right? Okay, C came in last, right? So if you're candidate B, I think you feel very unfairly treated, okay? If you're candidate B, your attitude is, this was a contest between me and A, right? This really was an election between me and A. C was just some loser who came in third place, right? So if this really is a contest between me and A, between candidate A and candidate B, why does the presence of C matter? Why should the presence of C matter at all? You know, if you're candidate B, right? C is just some loser who strolled into this election, like maybe a Jill Stein or like a Gary Johnson, somebody like that. So C doesn't win. and they came in last. However, their presence changed the winner. With C there, A gets to win. But if C had just stayed out of the election, like the loser they are, if they had just stayed out, then B would have won. So B, I think, is justifiably mad at candidate C for being a loser in an election, but then also bringing B down with them. Candidate B, I think, is also justifiably angry with the voting method itself. This phenomenon where C is allowed to bring B down with him, that phenomenon only happened in this example because plurality is susceptible to spoilers. This election was not susceptible to spoilers under instant runoff voting. So candidate B might say, hey, I deserve to win, and instant runoff voting would have chosen me as the winner. Instant runoff voting would have not allowed C to be a spoiler in this election. Okay, so that's what a Condorcet candidate is. That's what a spoiler candidate is. In the final video setting up this project, I just want to briefly go over the coding requirements to answer the questions at hand here. We're going to investigate these 3 claims. That's what we're trying to do.